Hey, this is just a few minutes of footage from our break on August 12th, 2018, when we were doing the March for History. Most of this time is spent with a local historian named Glenn Treibs. Hope you enjoy.
Here we are at our mid-afternoon break, rest stop on Highway 87. You can hear the highway right behind there. We're playing a little game here called Fort Sumter. It's a simulation, kind of the lead up to the Civil War. Played it a few times. I lost every time as the South. Finally get to be the soulless damn Yankees this time. We'll see how that one goes. So this is what we do here when we're marching for history.
In fact, I also have a collection. I'm trying to get a collection of every one I can to have at least one of the school books from all of those 44 schools. I've got about 30. They're in my bookcase in that 1909 restoration. Cool. So I collect almost everything.
So my understanding is that during the Civil War, the German part of Central Texas actually wanted to secede from Texas and form its own free state. That's what I've heard.
No, that is so complicated. We could spend hours on that. When you had the group from Germany with the nobility that started the Adelsverein, it means Society of Nobles. There were all sorts of motives in that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure most of it was monetary, that they thought they'd have colonies in Texas and then they'd build trade and it would enrich them. But there were some that might have wanted to have such a strong German presence that it might have been, Texas was a country. So with that influence it could have taken. In fact, at one time the Constitution of Texas was printed in English and German. Did you know that?
I did not know.
Yes. That's how much of a German element there was. From Mason, 40 miles north of Fredericksburg, all the way to Houston are German communities.
Yes.
And you can usually spot those, interestingly enough, because you'll be driving along in the rural areas and there'll be a Lutheran church over here and a Lutheran church over there. Well, that's not the common southern counties. So you know that German element goes all the way through that area.
I didn't know that it went that far east.
East?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Houston.
Yeah, there were a lot of Germans ended up in Houston. You have to remember, we came through customs in Galveston.
Yes.
And then we went by schooner to Indianola, which doesn't exist anymore, which was called Indian Point, Indianola, and Karlshafen.
Okay.
Our first leader was Prince Karl from Neubraunfels Schloss in Germany. And he named it supposedly after one of the officials in the Adelsverein, but I really think he named it after him because when he went to New Braunfels, he called it the first house he lived in that they built for him, which was just a dog-trot log cabin, Sophienburg, the fortress of Sophie, because he was in love with her and engaged to her. And he named the town after his home area, New Braunfels. So I'm pretty sure he named Karlshafen after himself, but he didn't want to admit it. He was a very aristocratic person who had a valet who dressed him and a hunter and a whole entourage of people. So he didn't like Americans. But then you have Moisebach, the second leader, who was very loyal. When he started the little town between Fredericksburg and Mason, he called it Loyal Valley. Very loyal to the American cause. He, in fact, was so well read with his library of 30,000 books in his home that he knew about Enchanted Rock and knew about the San Saba mission that was wiped out by the Comanches while he was in Germany. And by the way, if you talk about his German heritage and wanting to make this a German area, Moisebach, when he was leaving England, renounced his title. Now that's admirable, people, because I'll tell you, you get a whole lot more dinner invitations as the Baron von Moisebach than you do as Mr. Moisebach. Yeah. So he lost his privileges with renouncing his title, and that's something Prince Karl never would have done. So you have such a range of intentions and feelings. Most of the people who came, I feel, as far as the settlers, were not liking the conditions in Germany. Now sometimes it's so often said about early settlements in the United States about religious freedom that they'll throw that in with us. but that's not usable with the Germans, because when we got here, still 99% of us were Lutherans or Catholics. We didn't come for religious freedoms. We came for betterment.
So
And they had to be of a halfway middle class, because you had to sell properties over there to be able to move over here and exist. I still have letters said that they wanted to sell another piece of property where they could send the money to.
the Germans out here are supposed to have been very interested in education. So how did
Absolutely.
that kind of value come about?
Well, you have the kindergarten in Germany. That was unheard of in Europe. And it was just, I have a whole bookcase of books that were brought from Germany in those trunks where you had to bring things to stay alive. I had the oldest one is from the 1700s, and it's on the French Revolution. But if you tie in the fact that the American Revolution and the French Revolution influenced the intellectuals in Germany to try to bring that about in Germany, the revolution of 1848 was unsuccessful, and we were in the middle of all that when we were leaving. That theory, those theories and that thought, the Boisebox, our leader of our colony, they had 30,000 books in their library. That's a lot now for a personal library.
Yes.
And so they were very educated, cultured people who came. And I say, you might have a book on how to build a mill. You had a book of old German songs printed, I think, in 1842. Now, those songs would be something, and they were old German songs in 1842.
Wow.
And just a range of political and note and things for the housewife that they brought in their trunks. In fact, I still have two of the trunks 2 of my 8 families brought with some of the items that were in them, because Germans didn't throw anything away, and my family's kept them as heritage. My wife wasn't from here. She'd say, well, you didn't know your great-great-grandparents. I said, well, that's fine, but they're part of me, and I honor them by keeping those things. I don't think they had anything from past the 60s, They always went through everything and bought new things, but we kept our old things. So I have one of the German radios that interviewed me said, you have more things from old Germany than most households in Germany. I said, well, after all the bombing and everything, I can imagine so. But they don't like old things generally in Germany. They put them on the curb for somebody to take if they want. And if they were deprived during the war and didn't have those things, I can see that they might want new things. But they're very honored here in Fredericksburg. So I don't even know what your original question was.
How did German culture come to emphasize education? And it sounds like they were trying to force an enlightenment.
Like if we had 44 schools in this one county, then the families would get together and meet, and they'd try to come up with enough money or enough labor to build a little one-room schoolhouse, usually. The ones that are standing were rock or lumber. Earliest ones probably rock. And a lot of those are still standing. In fact, we have a rural school association that has an organization that goes there on tour and such. But the communities wanted to educate their children. That wasn't exclusive to Germans. The English had those little home schools where the wife would teach. Oh, by the way, one of the books from my ancestors was a book of sermons, and I thought that was strange because nobody had been a pastor. Well, they brought a book of sermons, so when they couldn't get to town to church, they could have church at home.